Good morning. I'm Ruth Medd, the Executive Chair of Women on Boards, a company that has members all around the world and operates physically in the UK and Australia. So Happy New Year, everybody. This is the first of my vacancies for the year, and I thought I'd talk about a number of vacancies that have just recently been put onto the jobs board, and also two other topics that might help you guide your path during 2022. Basically, what remuneration might you expect, and what's the composition of the WOB jobs board, and to see how that can match your aspirations. But first up, let's look at some vacancies. It's an interesting time of the year, New Year. We get some quite interesting things posted. First up, not-for-profits. Remember, lots of not-for-profits pay their directors, and this is no exception. This is called NIAMI, and it's 24663, closes on the 23rd of January. It's a mental health body, and they're looking for finance, cybersecurity, digital transformation, law, and strategy. Now, they fortunately have two vacancies, so you don't have to fit all of those, but it's quite clear that there's a big demand, at least for cybersecurity and digital transformation at the present, and there's always a big demand for finance and strategy. So that's the first one. I commend that to you, worth a look. Next up, 24764, something called Food Lab Sydney. This is a spin-off out of the University of Sydney. They're paying expenses, and it closes on the 31st of January. And it styles itself as a commercial food business incubator. Now, I'm a bit of a food incubator, being the chairman of a chocolate company or a cocoa growing company in far north Queensland. So this sounds a bit interesting to me, so I hope it resonates with you. They're looking for a range of skills: business acumen, circular and regenerative economies. Do you know something about that? Transformation and growth, public relations and governance. I suspect they've got more than one vacancy also, so give them a look if that interests you. So that's two not-for-profits. Next up, I've got a couple of government or semi-government roles. The first up is 24760, the Grampians Tourism Board. They're looking for a chair. It's a paid role, closes on the 21st of January. Quite clearly, you need to know something about the Grampians area in Victoria, here in Australia. But it's a peak body, and it represents the tourism in the Grampians region. They're looking for stakeholder engagement, governance, business development, and strategy, and clearly someone who's got the capability to chair the board. So have a think about that if it's in your neck of the woods. Second up, 24799, which is titled the Predator Free 2050 Limited. It's a New Zealand enterprise. Seems to be a government board, but it's a charitable company established to help deliver New Zealand's goal of eradicating possums, stoats, and rats by 2050. Possibly not something for everyone, but you know, Australia, as well as New Zealand's got a proud history of trying to eradicate pests, and we do pretty well at it. They're looking for governance and public administration in this case, so you do not need to be an expert on how to eradicate possums, stoats, and rats. So have a think about that. Closes on the 4th of February. So that's just two not-for-profits and two government semi-governments for this week. Don't want to overburden you, but remember there's 550 vacancies on the jobs website, and this week WOB Australia sent out a note saying that we had 22 new vacancies and 132 in total. So have a look if you're interested. Now, my next two topics. Just before Christmas, I wrote an article about remuneration. What can you expect for remuneration if you take on board roles? It's on the website. Look at the news feed on the front page and you can get access to it. Now, clearly, remuneration derives from nothing up to well-paid listed companies. The top of the tree is probably the Commonwealth Bank, which is the #1 company in Australia, last time I looked, and they pay about $330,000 a year, depending on what you get paid for committee work. But there's a range of companies in that article, and basically, if you're wanting to be a company director full-time, you may do other things as well. You may have, incomes from other sources, but you need to consider how you put together your portfolio of boards so that you achieve your objectives of financial sustainability, if that's one of them. So I recommend that article to you. Second up, the other thing I do at the end of each year is look at the jobs that have been posted on the WOB jobs board and look to see what percentage of boards are in each sector, what percentage are paid, what percentage are unpaid, and also the numbers of postings. So it's a KPI for me as the manager of the jobs board. So in 2021, 66% of the roles posted were paid, 17% paid expenses, and about 18% were unpaid. The interesting elements of those stats are government boards, and there's lots of those, from running Australia Post here in Australia to eradicating stouts, possums and rats in New Zealand, and they generally pay directors, some not a huge amount and others modestly well, not commercial rates but edging up there. So government boards are clearly one place for you to look at. But the really interesting outcome from this exercise was that the number of paid not-for-profit roles has increased substantially since I last did this exercise. And there's lots of reasons for this. One is that the not-for-profit sector really is comprised of charitable entities at one end, think of arts boards. At the other end, you think of large business enterprises, think of disability service providers who have large incomes and large client base. So it's entirely reasonable that the not-for-profit sector will evolve over time, and as governance improves generally, and also in the not-for-profit sector, then you'll start to pay your directors because they also are in search of relatively scarce talent. So what do you do when you have relatively scarce talent? You either push your vision and your mission and ask people to contribute their services pro bono, perfectly reasonable thing to do, or you start to pay people and recognize the substantial commitment that people have to make and the risks involved when you take on some of these roles. So that's my review of the board and my two sort of articles for this session. So my tip for January is really understand the environment you're in, and I've tried to give you some idea about that with these remarks. Set your objectives for 2022. I mean, if you think that I'm looking for my first paid role, well, think about where you want to target, what type of role, etc. And most importantly, use the tools that are available on the WOB website. We've got proformas for CVs and cover letters. We have programs that we run to assist you have a decent CV, etc., etc. You all know this, but I'm just reinforcing it as it's the start of the new year and time we set some objectives for the year. So I hope you found that interesting, and keep well, and please get in touch if you need to. You can get me via the contact page on the WOB website. So cheerio for now.